Hello everyone, and welcome to this NatSpec Techability webinar from Mobile Device Management. We're lucky enough to be joined by Martin Pistorius today, and today's webinar came from a champion session that was so useful that we've actually expanded it into a webinar, and Martin's been very kind to give his time for this. So I'll hand over to Martin and let you take it from there, Martin. Thanks for coming today. And yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Neil. In my presentation, I'm going to talk about who I am, giving a very brief introduction into who I am and my role at the Karten Network. I will provide an introduction on mobile device management. Very briefly elaborate on some common terms for MDMs. Do a whistle-stop tour through some of the more popular MDMs, pausing at the end to go into a little more detail about Microsoft's solutions before wrapping up. Before I get into mobile device management, I thought to give a very brief introduction into who I am. As you probably know, I'm Martin Pistorius. I started my working career in April 2003, and over the past 20 years I have been involved with technology and disability in some shape or form. At the beginning of 2009 I started working for myself doing web development and consultancy work. I also completed a computer science degree, and then in 2014 I, amongst other things, started working for the Karten Network. You may have noticed that I am an AAC user myself, so along with all my technical knowledge and experience, I have first-hand knowledge of what it is like to use assistive technology. I started off using switch scanning with WinSpeak, for those of you old enough to remember that. I later moved to using direct access using a head mouse, and as my physical abilities improved using a keyboard. So I have a good understanding of the difficulties and frustrations, but also the life-changing difference assistive technology can have. My role at the Karten Network, apart from keeping various things running behind the scenes from a technical side, is to provide support to organizations who are part of the Karten Network. Initially, I focused on mobile technology. However, over the years, this has expanded to include other things such as assistive technology, and soon Microsoft 365. I have the advantage too, that if I don't know offhand, then I can spend time working on how to solve a particular question or issue. Mobile device management. I thought it may be useful to first define what I mean by a mobile device. For the purposes of today, I would class a mobile device as a computer that is untethered, capable of running unplugged, using its internal battery and a wireless network connection, has a touch screen, and is running a version of iOS, Android, or Windows. Basically, any computing device that is not a traditional desktop or laptop computer. In simple terms, a tablet, iPod, or mobile phone. When I started working for the Karten Network, mobile devices were fairly new, and the devices were designed to be used by a single user, mostly in a private capacity. This caused a lot of issues, particularly around purchasing and managing apps installed on the devices, and how many devices could be associated with a particular account. Thankfully, probably more driven by the corporate sector, and as a spin-off, the education sector, this has improved. Deciding how you manage your mobile devices is largely dependent on the organization and their context. For example, how many devices do they have? their resources, and what the devices are used for. I have known in the past, some Karten centers had several email accounts, each associated with about 5 devices. Their organization provided them with a credit card to use to purchase apps. It's probably not the most efficient way of managing devices, but it worked for them. Other Karten centers use volume licensing and a fully fledged mobile device management system to manage the devices. Typically, when you talk about mobile device management, or MDM for short, you mean a piece of software, usually cloud-based, that is used to manage the devices. Things like installing and removing apps, updating the operating system, and even tracking where the device is currently located. You don't need to use the MDM system, of course, but I would recommend thought is given to how the mobile devices within your organization are managed. I would suggest considering the following factors when deciding on how to manage your mobile device. How many devices do you have? Other factors have an influence on this, but once you have more than 10 devices, you really should be using some system to help you manage them, or at very least a thought-out process so you know how they are managed. Do you have specific restrictions you want enforced on the device? These typically include Wi-Fi settings, preventing purchasing or adding apps, and restricting access to certain things. How often are the devices updated or changed? If you are having to make changes regularly to devices, it can quickly become very time-consuming, compared to, say, doing it once a year. Who owns the device? Do they belong to the individual or the organization? And what is the organization's policy for device use? Ensuring that such policies are adhered to can be supported by the mobile device management system. Where are the devices located? Are they all within your physical reach? All part of the same network, or are they distributed over various locations? What platform do the devices use? And by this I mean, are they Apple, Android, or Microsoft devices, or a combination thereof? Some MDMs only support one operating system, typically the iOS-based devices. Will devices be managed in-house or by an external contractor? I know of one organization who used an external company to manage their network, and this included management of their mobile devices. So anytime they wanted an app added, it meant contacting them and asking for the app to be pushed to the device. And of course, cost. Some of the MDMs are not cheap, and a lot of them charge per device. There may be more aspects to consider. However, these, once thought through, should provide you with enough information to decide how to manage your mobile devices. Before I move on, a couple of tips. If possible, have one device that you use as your test device. You can, of course, still use this device like you do the others, but select one device to test any changes or updates before you push changes to 100 devices. If you do allow staff to set up Apple devices, make sure that you have a way of accessing the Apple account the device is linked to. Because if they leave and you can't remove the device from their Apple account, the device becomes an expensive paperweight. This is by design, and its intention is to prevent the theft of Apple devices. You can contact Apple, but then you are required to prove you own the device. If Apple are satisfied, then they can reset the device. I supported one organization with this issue, and in the end, despite all efforts, the device could not be used. Apple Configurator. Apple Configurator is a utility for managing and configuring iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, and Apple TV devices. It is only available for Mac OS, and so you need a Mac to use it. There is now an Apple Configurator for iOS, but that is slightly different and is more used for adding macOS devices to either Apple School Manager or Apple Business Manager. The power that Apple Configurator gives you is it allows you to create profiles and configure various settings. These can then be pushed to your iOS devices. This means you are able to create blueprints containing all the settings, restrictions, and apps you want on your devices. Then simply connect the devices, and Apple Configurator does the rest. While it still means physically connecting a cable to the device, it makes life so much easier if you need to set up multiple devices, or quickly restore it to your desired setup. MDMs. When it comes to mobile device management solutions, you will typically see three terms being used. Mobile Device Management, or MDM. Enterprise Mobility Management, EMM for short. And Unified Endpoint Management, or UEM. They all approach device management from a slightly different perspective, but there is quite a bit of overlap between the three. Mobile device management systems are specifically aimed at controlling and configuring mobile device functionality. They have features like device enrollment, remote control, device lockdown, and location tracking. Enterprise mobility management systems are very closely related to MDMs, and typically have all the features of MDMs, but also have features to manage data on mobile devices. They tend to have a greater emphasis on managing bring your own device scenarios. Some systems allow you to create a secure container on someone's device, where all the organization's applications run from and all the related data remains within that container. One term related to this which you may come across is MAM, or Mobile Application Management. This is software that enables you to secure and control applications, typically corporate applications on mobile devices. Unified Endpoint Management. Let me quickly explain what is meant by an endpoint. If you think of a computer network as an irrigation system that you could find in a garden, the network would be the pipes carrying the water, and the endpoints would be the sprinklers. So, unified endpoint management systems provide a single management platform to not only perform the management of mobile devices, but all endpoints, for example, desktop computers, printers, Internet of Things devices, even wearables. Although these days, you will find that the distinguishing differences between MDMs, EMMs, and UEMs is becoming less and less. There are now a number of MDMs available. Before I go through them, a brief disclaimer. I have not used many of these, so I only have theoretical knowledge of them. Some of the more popular MDMs are Cisco's Meraki. Meraki has been around for a number of years and is possibly the most well-known MDM. Meraki supports all mobile device platforms. It has a good reputation and offers a free demo, although you do need to provide quite a lot of details before you can access the demo. VMware Workspace ONE. previously known as AirWatch, before it was acquired by VMware. It supports all the major platforms and has a number of automations. VMware to offer a free demo. SOTI Control is another popular MDM with a good reputation. As with the previous ones, it supports all the major platforms and can be installed either on premises or deployed from SOTI's cloud. A free trial is available. IBM Mars 360 is one of the more expensive MDMs, but has a good reputation, particularly in terms of security. It approaches mobile device management more from a unified endpoint management perspective, rather than pure device management. Again, it supports all the major platforms, and there is a free trial available. Scale Fusion, considered by some to be one of the best mobile device management systems. It supports all the major platforms and can be used to manage all devices, not just mobile devices. A free 14-day trial is available. Manage Engine also supports all platforms and has a good track record. Manage Engine Mobile Device Manager Plus is aimed more at large-scale organizations. That is not to say it won't work for small organizations too. It can be deployed either on premises or in the cloud, and a free 30-day trial is available. Kanji is a highly rated MDM specifically for Apple devices. Similar to IBM Mars 360, it approaches the mobile device management from a security perspective first, and device management second. It offers a rich set of features, and I believe there is a free 14-day trial available. Jamf Pro is another very popular and trusted MDM specifically for Apple devices. It is reported to integrate well with other systems and offers a host of features. A free trial is available on request. Microsoft Intune, one of the groundbreakers in mobile device management. Initially, it focused more on supporting Windows computers than Windows Surface, but it now supports all other mobile platforms. A free trial is available too. Also, if you have Microsoft 365, depending on your specific license, Microsoft Intune may already be included, especially on some of the education licenses. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about Microsoft's basic mobility and security features, simply because it's something that you may already have access to if you are using Microsoft 365. Microsoft's basic mobility and security is effectively a subset of Microsoft Intune. As such, it can't quite do what Intune can do, but it may be enough for your needs, or even a way to start exploring using an MDM without incurring additional costs. As the name suggests, it does tend to focus more on securing the use of mobile devices, rather than fully control them. As far as I am aware, it doesn't support remotely deploying apps to devices, other than perhaps Microsoft's 365 apps. It does, however, support a host of parameters such as password requirements, device software requirements, control over device settings like if the camera can be used or not. It is possible to set up various policies. Policies, in this context, are effectively rules that specify what happens if a device meets or doesn't meet the requirement. Basic mobility and security can also remotely wipe either just Microsoft 365 data or the entire device. This is something to be mindful of because you could potentially enroll a device, set up a policy, and then if that policy is triggered, wipe someone's entire device, including all their personal photos and applications. In the most recent Karten Network newsletter, published yesterday, I have written an article about Microsoft's basic mobility and security, which you may find helpful. I have only really touched the surface, and there are many more MDMs available. Which one is the best? It's hard to say. I think it comes down to your needs, your resources, and budget. And these systems are continually evolving too. One last thing I would add. If you do decide to acquire a MDM, it's worth asking if either an educational or charity discount rate is on offer. Many of the supplies do provide these. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
So yeah, we'll end the webinar there. If there's anything else, though, I'm happy staying on a little bit longer, even if it's just to take these things down and put them into an email so we can look at them another time. And it sounds like Jamf would be a good place to start if we ask them if they'd be willing to do a kind of one-off webinar if they're not providing enough support materials, maybe.